Ever get that feeling like you want to learn something really cool, but without having to wade through like a ton of information? I think we've all been there. That's exactly what we're doing today. We're taking a shortcut to some seriously useful knowledge, like the kind of stuff that can actually change how your conversations go, like starting right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We're diving deep into the power of spoken communication. We're zeroing in on these very specific phrases, almost like verbal shortcuts. These phrases can seriously influence how your conversations go and whether you succeed with them. Think of it like a toolbox filled with just the right words waiting to be used.
Perfect analogy. Our guidebook for this exploration is Phil M. Jones's book, Exactly What to Say: The Magic Words for Influence and Impact. So think of this as like a deep dive into the book's most powerful insights, practical stuff that you can start using immediately, like today, in your conversations to get better results, whether you're chatting with colleagues, family, or just about anyone, really.
The core idea that Jones presents is really powerful. He basically says that having the right words at your fingertips, knowing precisely when to use them, and understanding how to deliver them can be the make or break factor in whether you get what you want or not. It's about being intentional with your language and turning everyday words into a real skill.
And this isn't just some vague advice. The book has a ton of support from people who really know what they're talking about. I mean, we've got endorsements from Jeffrey Hazlett, the primetime TV and podcast host. He saw how practical this stuff is right away. And there's Bob Berg, who co-authored The Go-Giver. He talks about how these words can almost be magical when you use them right. And Philip Hesketh, the persuasion expert, he really emphasizes how simple and proven these techniques are.
It's true. The range of endorsements is really impressive. We also have Sylvie DiGiusto, the corporate image consultant, Grant Labaugh from StickyMarketing.com, Richard Dixon of Holidays Please, the travel company, and Rob Brown, the networking guru.
Right, and even more. Forbes.com columnist Ian Altman, John Yanch from Duct Tape Marketing, best-selling author Brian Eisenberg, and fellow best-selling author Seth Price. When you have that many people, leaders in all these different areas backing up a book, it tells you something. This stuff is practical and it works in so many situations.
I think it's worth pointing out how many of those endorsements come from experts in sales and persuasion. It highlights just how practical these techniques can be for getting real-world results. These endorsements really speak to the power of the book's main idea, that even small changes in how we say things can have a huge impact on how well we connect with people and influence them. It suggests that these aren't just tricks with words, but are based on a deep understanding of human psychology and how we make decisions.
Exactly, yeah. So, getting into the nitty-gritty, what exactly are these magic words?
Well, in the book, they're described as these specific groups of words that directly tap into your subconscious brain. You can think of your subconscious as that autopilot part of your mind. It's the part that influences decisions based on really ingrained patterns and emotions. And it's programmed to make those super quick yes or no judgments without getting bogged down in too much overthinking.
It's almost like a reflex, but with words.
That's a great way to put it. What's really fascinating is how much of our lives operate on that subconscious level, often without us even realizing it. Jones gives some great examples of this, like how it controls our breathing while we're sleeping, or how it guides us on a familiar route without us having to think about it much. And have you noticed how you instantly perk up when you hear your name? That's your subconscious at work.
It's so true. So the idea here is that when you use language that kind of bypasses that conscious thought process and connects directly with that instinctive part of the brain, you gain a huge advantage in your conversations. It's a way to become more persuasive, not by manipulating people, but by aligning your communication with those natural pathways that lead to quicker decisions.
Exactly. It's not about tricking anyone, but understanding how communication works on a deeper level.
Okay, so let's get into the first set of these magic words, shall we? It's a phrase designed to help you overcome that fear of rejection, when you're putting forward a new idea. The phrase is, I'm not sure if it's for you, but...
Oh, that's a great one to start with. It's really effective because it addresses that fear that many of us have when we suggest something new, the fear of being told no. By starting with, I'm not sure if it's for you, you're essentially telling the listener's subconscious, hey, relax, there's absolutely no pressure here. What's really interesting is that it often does the opposite of what you might expect. It actually sparks their curiosity. They start thinking, well, what is it that might not be for me? That little bit of intrigue can be super powerful in pulling them in.
So it's about reverse psychology then, creating intrigue by lowering the pressure.
Exactly. It's a subtle approach, but it can be very effective.
I love that. And then there's that little word at the end, but, Typically, when you hear but, it kind of erases everything you heard before it. Like when someone says, that's a great idea, but all you really hear is what comes after the but, right?
You're absolutely right. And that's exactly how it works in this context. When you say, I'm not sure if it's for you, but the subconscious mind tends to downplay the first part and focus more on what comes after. So it's like their inner voice is hearing, you might want to take a look at this.
It's like a subtle form of verbal judo.
I like that analogy.
So the book offers some really great real-world examples of how you can use this. For instance, you could say, I'm not sure if it's for you, but would you happen to know anyone who might be interested in? And then mention the positive results your product or service offers. Or, I'm not sure if it's for you, but we're planning on getting together on Saturday, and you're more than welcome to join us.
Those are great examples. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Something simple like, I'm not sure if it's for you, but this offer is only good this month. I wouldn't want you to miss out, especially if it could help you out.
That's a good one. I like how this phrase keeps things pretty low stakes. You know, it's like either the person is interested and they ask for more details, or they say they'll think about it. Neither of those feels like a hard no, which makes it a lot easier to start the conversation in the first place.
Exactly. It keeps the conversation flowing and opens up the possibility of moving forward.
Okay, let's move on to another powerful set of magic words. These words play on something most of us value, being open-minded. It's as simple as asking, how open-minded are you? It's about tapping into that natural desire we have to see ourselves in a positive light. We all want to think of ourselves as open to new ideas and possibilities.
It's true. Nobody wants to be labeled as closed-minded. So when you ask, how open-minded are you? You're appealing directly to that self-perception. And then the important part comes next.
Right. You don't just leave that question hanging. You immediately follow it up with whatever you want them to consider. This is where it gets really interesting because it gives the illusion of choice, but you're strategically guiding them toward your desired outcome.
That's the genius of it. They've just acknowledged how open-minded they are, so it becomes harder for them to just reject the suggestion that follows.
The book actually says that using this technique can shift your chances of agreement from a 50-50 split to like 90-10 in your favor.
It makes a lot of sense. You're using their self-perception to your advantage.
So, to give some real-world examples, you could say, how open-minded would you be about trying this new approach? Or, would you be open-minded about giving this a fair shot? Or, how open-minded are you about potentially boosting your monthly income?
How open-minded are you about us maybe working together on this? I like those examples because they make it much harder for someone to just flat out dismiss what you're saying. Even if they don't immediately jump on board, at least they feel compelled to think about it, even if just for a second.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, what about those times when you feel like you're talking to someone who just thinks they have all the answers, you know, the know-it-alls? What do you do then?
Ugh, those conversations. There are magic words for that too. In this case, it's, what do you know? This is a super smart way to handle those who are overly confident without getting confrontational, which can backfire big time. The goal here isn't to win an argument, but to introduce a bit of doubt.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Sure. So by starting your question with, what do you know about to? You're gently questioning the very foundation of their opinion. It's not aggressive, but it does make them pause and reflect on where they're getting their information from.
Ah, I see. It's like subtly challenging their expertise without directly attacking them.
Precisely. Often it leads people to realize that maybe their strong opinion isn't as rock solid as they thought. Importantly, it allows them to rethink things without feeling like they're losing face.
That's so smart. Do you have any examples of how this works in real life?
Absolutely. Let's say you're in a business setting. You could ask, what do you know about our company, our approach, and how we do things differently? Or what do you know about all the changes that have happened since mention a relevant event? Or how much do you actually know about how things work around here?
Those are good. What about when you're trying to convince someone about a specific product or service?
You could say something like, what do you know about the benefits of mention the product or service category? These questions really make people rethink their assumptions. Even if they don't change their mind completely, you learn something valuable. You discover their reasoning, which lets you position your own point of view strategically.
Makes sense. It's like gaining intel before you launch your counter-argument.
Precisely. Now, let's talk about something fundamental to getting people to take action: motivation. And the magic words for tapping into motivation are, how would you feel if? Generally, there are two big drivers for our actions. One is away motivation, That's our desire to avoid pain or loss. The other is toward motivation, which is all about seeking pleasure or gain.
It's like we're always trying to either move away from something bad or towards something good.
Exactly. And understanding these drivers is crucial for effective communication. The book really emphasizes that motivation is basically a reason to move, a combination of motive and action. People are either driven by avoiding a potential loss or by achieving a desired gain. And interestingly, the fear of missing out or losing something is often a much stronger motivator than the possibility of gaining something.
It's true. We're wired to avoid pain, right? So how does this connect to decision making?
Well, this is where emotions become super important. The book points out that we often make decisions based on our gut feeling before we logic it out. Something has to feel right emotionally before it makes sense logically. So if you're trying to convince someone purely through logic, you're probably missing a big piece of the puzzle.
So we need to make sure we're connecting with their emotions.
Absolutely. And that's where the power of how would you feel if comes in. It lets the other person vividly imagine themselves in a future scenario and actually feel the emotions they would experience. By painting a picture that either triggers positive feelings associated with a desired outcome or negative feelings associated with a potential loss, you're giving them a powerful emotional reason to consider making a change.
That makes sense. Do you have some examples of how we can put this into practice?
Of course. To trigger those positive emotions, you might say, how would you feel if this decision directly led to that promotion you deserve? Or, to tap into that fear of loss, how would you feel if your biggest competitor suddenly overtook you in the market?
Wow, those are powerful. Any others?
Sure. How would you feel if you managed to completely turn this difficult situation around? Or how would you feel if you lost everything you worked so hard for? And to really get them visualizing, imagine how you'd feel if a year from now you were debt-free, living in your dream home and planning your next big vacation.
Those are all fantastic examples. It's like you're letting them live out the potential outcomes in their mind.
Precisely. By creating that emotional connection, you're making them far more receptive to your suggestions and proposals.
Okay, I love that. Now, let's talk about harnessing the power of our imagination. The next set of magic words we're going to look at is surprisingly simple. Just imagine.
This is all about the fact that every single decision we make in the real world starts as a hypothetical scenario in our minds. If someone can't even picture themselves doing something, the chances of them actually doing it are really slim.
You know, it's like that saying, I just couldn't see myself doing that. They're literally talking about a lack of mental imagery.
That's it. So the key is to help the other person create those mental pictures. And just imagine is like the magic key that unlocks that mind's eye.
It's like you're inviting them to create a movie in their head.
Precisely. And just like with the how would you feel if technique, you can tailor your just imagine scenarios to either tap into that away motivation, focusing on avoiding pain, or to toward motivation, highlighting the positive outcomes.
So for away motivation, you might say something like, just imagine the conversation with your boss if you let this opportunity slip away. And for toward motivation, you could try, just imagine how much easier life would be 6 months from now once you've implemented this new strategy.
Right. Those are spot-on examples. You could also try something like, just imagine the look on your kids' faces when you achieve this, appealing to that emotional reward. Or keep it open-ended. Just imagine the impact this could have.
It's so effective because you're not forcing anything. You're letting their own imagination do the persuading.
Exactly. They're creating their own arguments for why your idea makes sense.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about getting people interested and motivated, but what about actually securing their commitment? You know, like getting them to schedule a follow-up meeting or agreeing to the next step.
That's where the magic words, when would be a good time, come into play.
That sounds so simple. How does that work?
This phrase is incredibly effective at preventing that common objection, I'm too busy or I don't have time, by asking, when would be a good time for you to case? You're subtly leading them to assume that there will be a suitable time. It takes that immediate no off the table right away.
I like how you're not directly challenging their busy schedule. You're just assuming that you'll find a time that works for both of you.
Precisely. It's a collaborative approach.
So how would you use this in practice?
Well, you could ask, when would be a good time for you to take a look at this information? Or when would be a good time for us to get started on this project? Or you could be more specific, given your current priorities, when would be a good time for us to connect next week?
Those are great. Once they agree to a time frame, what's the next step?
The key is to be specific. Schedule that follow-up right then and there. Don't leave it vague. And here's a little extra tip. When you do follow up, instead of asking that open-ended question, what did you think? Try a more positive and focused question, like, so what did you find particularly interesting about it? This steers the conversation toward the positive and reduces the chance of objections popping up.
I love that. It's like setting the stage for a more positive and productive conversation. So what about those times when you suspect someone hasn't actually done what they promised to do? Like following up on something you agreed upon.
That's a tricky one. But there are magic words for that, too, you can use. I'm guessing you haven't got around to. This is a really smart way to address the situation without sounding accusatory or making the other person defensive. It gives them an easy way to admit they haven't done it yet.
It sounds like a pretty bold approach, but also quite diplomatic.
Yeah. By starting with, I'm guessing you haven't got around to, you're subtly heading off any excuses they might have prepared.
I see. So they can't really say, oh, I haven't had time, because you've already implied that you understand they might be busy.
Exactly. Let's say, for example, someone said they needed to discuss something with their partner before making a decision. Instead of asking directly, did you talk to your partner yet? You could say, I'm guessing you haven't got around to speaking with your partner yet. This makes it a lot harder for them to keep using that as an excuse. They'll either have to confirm they did and tell you the outcome, or feel a little obligated to say they'll do it soon.
So it either moves things forward or at least forces them to be more honest about their intentions.
That's the idea.
Do you have any other examples of how you can use this phrase?
Sure. You could try, I'm guessing you haven't had a chance to go over those documents yet. Or I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to setting a date for that yet. Or I'm guessing you haven't quite made a decision about this yet.
Those are all really useful. Okay, so moving on, let's look at some small but powerful tweaks we can make to our everyday language. The book calls these simple swaps. It's basically about transforming open-ended questions into closed-ended ones to get more predictable and positive results.
I love this concept. Little changes can have a big impact.
Exactly. So the first swap is changing the very common question, do you have any questions? To the more direct, what questions do you have for me?
Oh, that's a good one. It seems so subtle, but it really changes things, especially when you're wrapping up a presentation or a sales pitch.
Exactly. Asking, do you have any questions? Almost suggests that it's okay if they don't have any, which can make them feel like they missed something or weren't paying attention. And it opens the door for them to say, I need to think about it, which can stall the whole process.
Right, and I need to think about it is often a way of saying, not right now.
Exactly. But by asking, what questions do you have for me? You're assuming they do have questions, and you're ready to answer them. And if they say they don't have any, it often means they've already made a decision, which means you can smoothly move to the next step.
It's a really subtle but effective way to keep the momentum going. And the second simple swap is just as clever. Instead of asking, can I have your phone number, which can feel a bit permission-based, you can ask, what's the best number to reach you at?
It's amazing how a small change in wording can make such a difference. Asking, can I have, can create a bit of resistance, like you're asking them to do you a favor. But asking for the best way to reach them is much smoother and more effortless. It's just assuming you'll be connecting in the future and just need the right way to do that.
These simple swaps are all about making it easy for the other person to give you what you want, often without them even realizing it. It's about framing the conversation in a way that leads naturally to the outcome you're looking for.
Okay, so what about when someone is having a hard time making a decision?
There are magic words for that too, of course. The phrase is, you have 3 options. People often freeze up when they have too many choices, and no one likes to feel like they're being manipulated, right? We all want to feel in control of our own decisions. So when someone's feeling stuck, presenting them with a limited number of options can be really helpful in getting them unstuck.
Makes sense. So you're giving them a framework for making a decision, but they still feel like they're in control.
Exactly. The specific phrase, as I see it, you have 3 options, not only makes things clearer, but it also makes you seem more objective, like you're just laying out the possibilities.
I see. So you're not telling them what to do, but you're guiding them.
Right. And this plays into a psychological principle called the rule of 3. 3 choices are generally easy for our brains to handle. And strategically, the book suggests presenting your preferred option last.
So you build up to it.
That's it. You present the first 2 options, maybe highlighting their drawbacks, and then you present your preferred option as the best and easiest solution.
And you give an example.
Sure. Imagine someone's thinking about a career change. You could say, So it sounds like you're not happy in your current job. As I see it, you have three options. 1, you could start looking for a completely different job in a new industry. 2, you could stay where you are and try to make things better. Or 3, you could explore this new opportunity we've been discussing.
Okay, I like where this is going. What's the next step?
Here's where you combine it with another set of magic words. After presenting those 3 options, you could ask, of those 3 options, which one feels like the easiest for you right now?
That's brilliant. You're subtly steering them towards your preferred choice by framing it as the easiest path.
Precisely. It's a very subtle but effective way to influence their decision-making.
Okay, let's move on to another set of magic words that taps into our human tendency to categorize ourselves and identify with specific groups. This one's really interesting. 2 types of people.
We do love to put ourselves into categories, don't we? This phrase is all about making decisions easier by presenting 2 contrasting options.
So it's about simplifying things.
Exactly. As soon as someone hears, there are 2 types of people in this world, their mind automatically starts trying to figure out which group they belong to. It instantly grabs their attention, and they wait to hear the 2 options you're about to lay out.
It makes perfect sense. We're wired to compare and contrast.
Right. And the key here is to present those 2 choices in a way that clearly favors the outcome you're aiming for. Let me give you some examples. You could say, there are 2 types of people. Those who leave their financial success entirely up to their employers, and those who take control of their finances and actively build their own future.
Okay, so in that example, it's pretty clear which group people would rather be a part of.
Exactly. Here's another one. There are those who judge before trying, and then there are those who are open to new experiences and make up their own minds. Or there are those who resist change, clinging to the past, and those who embrace progress and create a better future.
I love that. You're giving them a choice, but you're framing it in a way that subtly nudges them toward the more desirable option.
Precisely. And there's even a funny example that applies directly to this episode. There are those who read books like this and do nothing, and those who actually use what they learn and start seeing results.
Okay, I see what you did there. Very clever. It's like you're encouraging them to be the kind of person who takes action.
That's the point. It's a simple but powerful technique for prompting self-identification and encouraging the desired behavior. By polarizing the choices, you're making the decision easier for them.
That's fascinating. So what about when you're trying to connect with people you don't know very well? How do you build that rapport, especially early in the conversation?
That's a great question, and there's a set of magic words for that too. I bet you're a bit like me.
Really? I wouldn't have thought of that one. Tell me more.
Well, when you're talking to someone for the first time, you want the conversation to be as smooth and effortless as possible. Using, I bet you're a bit like me, as a way to introduce a relatable statement can help establish a connection quickly.
It's like creating that instant, we're on the same page feeling.
Exactly. It's a way of subtly gathering evidence and establishing common ground, which makes it harder for them to disagree with you later on. People aren't always honest about their habits and preferences, so getting them to agree with you early on can help prevent objections down the line.
I never thought of it that way. It's like you're subtly getting them to buy into your ideas before you even fully present them.
That's a great way to think about it. For example, let's say you're worried that someone might object to your proposal because of the time commitment. Early on in the conversation, you could say, I bet you're a bit like me. You're willing to put in the hard work now, knowing it'll pay off big time in the future.
I love that. Any other examples?
Sure. I bet you're a bit like me. You'd rather spend your evenings working on something meaningful than just vegging out in front of the TV. Or, I bet you're a bit like me, always juggling a million things and trying to get it all done.
So you're not just stating your values, you're getting them to agree with your values, which makes it harder for them to disagree later on.
Right. The trick is to deliver these statements with genuine eye contact and watch for those nonverbal cues, like a nod of agreement. Once they've acknowledged that they align with your idea, it's much harder for them to backpedal later on.
That's really clever. So we've covered quite a few magic words already. What's next?
Well, let's talk about leveraging the power of those deeply ingrained beliefs we formed in childhood. The magic words here are if, then.
I remember those if-then statements from my parents. If you don't clean your room, then no dessert. It's amazing how those things stick with us.
Right. We heard so many of those if-then statements as kids. Because we were conditioned to believe them, we can use that same structure as adults to create a sense of predictable outcomes.
So we're tapping into those deeply ingrained patterns of belief.
Exactly. Here are a few examples. You could say, if you decide to try this, then I can guarantee you won't be disappointed. Or if you stock this product in your stores, then I'm certain your customers will love it. Or even, if you give me a chance, then I'm confident you'll be thanking me later.
It's amazing how powerful those two little words, if and then, can be. It's like you're setting up a cause and effect relationship that feels almost inevitable.
Exactly. You're leveraging those deeply ingrained beliefs about how the world works.
Okay, so moving on, let's look at how to calm people down and create a sense of trust, especially in those high-pressure situations. And it's amazing how much power lies in just two words: don't worry.
It's incredible, right? Those two words can be so calming, especially when someone's feeling nervous or stressed. When you sense that anxiety, a confident and calmly delivered "don't worry" can instantly put them at ease.
It's like you're taking on the burden of worry for them.
In a way, yes. This phrase is particularly useful in high-stress situations or when someone's struggling to make a decision. It conveys a sense of control and support, as if you're saying, I've got this, and I'm here to help you through it.
I like how reassuring that is. Do you have any examples of how to use this in real life?
Sure, you might say, don't worry, it's totally normal to feel a little nervous right now. Just acknowledging their feelings can be very validating. Or, don't worry, I know you might not know what to do, but that's exactly why I'm here to guide you. That gives them clear support and direction.
Those are great. Any others?
Sure, you could try, don't worry, I felt the same way before I started, and look at me now, it all worked out perfectly. Sharing a relatable experience can really build trust and give them hope.
That's a good point. People are often reassured when they know they're not alone in feeling a certain way. Okay, let's move on to a set of magic words that leverages our tendency to follow social norms and be influenced by what others do. These two simple words can be surprisingly persuasive. Most people.
It's fascinating how much we're influenced by what other people are doing, isn't it? There's a reason why testimonials and reviews are so powerful. We want to know that others have made the same decision and that it worked out well for them. It gives us that sense of security in numbers.
It's like that classic example of kids being scared to jump off a diving board until one brave soul takes the plunge and suddenly everyone wants to do it.
Exactly. And sometimes, even as adults, we appreciate being subtly guided toward a particular course of action. If someone tells us directly, this is what you should do, it can feel pushy. But saying what most people do is much softer and more persuasive.
Because it feels less like an order and more like a helpful suggestion.
Exactly. When you confidently state what most people do, the subconscious mind often thinks, well, if most people are doing it, maybe I should too. The book gives some great examples of this. You could say, most people find it helpful to fill out these forms with me right here today. Or, what most people in your situation do is start with a small order so they can see the benefits for themselves.
Those are good examples. What about if you're dealing with someone who's on the fence about a bigger decision?
You could try something like, considering your goals, most people in your position wouldn't hesitate to grab this opportunity.
So you're subtly implying that they'd be missing out if they didn't do what most people are doing.
Precisely. It's about appealing to that desire to fit in and make the right choice. It's a gentle way to overcome inertia and encourage action.
Okay, so what about reframing negative situations into positive ones? What magic words can help us do that?
The simple phrase, the good news, is a really effective tool for this. It allows you to put a positive spin on things that might initially seem negative.
It's all about perspective, right?
Exactly. Psychologically, it's called labeling. When you attach a positive label to something, it becomes harder to see it in a negative light. And by prefacing your statement with, the good news is, you're making it much more likely that the other person will accept that positive label.
I like that. It's like you're setting the tone for a more positive interpretation.